Welcome to Fly on the Wall podcast. I'm your host, Chris Sonkson, CEO and founder of Church Boom. Here you get to sit in on a live coaching session as I coach pastors through the ministry challenges we all face. If you find this podcast helpful, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share. I am so excited about today's episode. We are talking with Pastor Louie, and we're talking about the difference between starting a second service or third service or whatever it is for you or planting. There is a huge difference, and whether you start or whether you plant will determine the success of launching that new service. So let's join into the conversation. Man, what's on your mind today? Let's jump into it. What questions you got?
We're considering launching a second service, so I wanted to just get some advice on that. Basically, I kind of know the parameters and what you're looking for to launch something like that, but I guess my question would be how so we hit 300 the last two weekends, and I think our average was like 2 to 250. So we're kind of there, we're at that 80% threshold. But I guess the question is how consistent. I mean, because that could drop off, it could go up or down either way. So just getting some advice on launching that second service.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So yeah, there's a few things. I think you and I briefly talked about it one time. A couple things. I think just from a time standpoint, some of the more popular times or more beneficial times, or sort of January, maybe around March, and then early September. I think those are great times. I love if it works out. I love when it's around January or somewhere in the beginning of the year, because that gives you that nice stretch before the summer hits you. And then you have a few months to gain momentum. So I think from a time frame standpoint, I think that's important. You are looking for 80% full in one of three areas. You're looking for it either in your main auditorium, in your parking lot, or in your children. And if you're hitting 80% in any of those, that's usually an indication. Now sustaining it, if you hit it once, you hit it twice, it's one thing. But if it's like, man, we're hitting it now a month and a half. That's when I really start thinking man, we better do something, because at that point, it's almost like your church is 11 months pregnant. You're ready to give birth to something new, but you're not making any room for it, for that to happen. So, those are some of the time frames, that I would think about.
What about an Easter launch? How about Easter time?
I think it's great.
Not a good time.
Well, no, I don't think anything's wrong with it personally. Everybody's got their personal opinion on it. Someone might listen to this podcast and think, well, no, I would do it differently. So I'm giving you my personal. Yeah. My personal thought process is if you launch personally, I like launching a week or two before Easter, because Easter is automatic. You follow what I'm saying?
Right.
Easter, you're going to have an automatic crowd. It's going to be your biggest crowd of the year. And then you're having a grand opening, and you're putting both of those waves on one platform, versus saying, okay, hey, let's have it on Easter. And then maybe 2 weeks before is our grand opening. So grand opening, that'll be big. Then you got 1 week, and then boom, you got Easter. So you get 2 big weeks rather than 1 big week. Yeah. Is the reason that I like it personally.
Right.
Personally,
yeah, that kind of makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, because you'll get good, nice. Now, here's the thing. Also, is people often, Louie, they'll focus on leading up to the grand opening, and they won't think about the next 30, 60, 90 days after the grand opening.
Right.
Don't forget that. That part's important.
Yeah. So you told me something about not launching a service or adding a service, but planting it. Can you define that a little bit more?
Yeah. So I think sometimes when, let's say, you got 1 service, you're going to 2, you got 2, you're going to 3, whatever. I think those are great times. They create, for whatever reason, energy. They create new time slots, new opportunities. But I think sometimes that what I find is, and I'm not saying it doesn't work all the time, but if you have an insane momentum, you might be able to pull that off. But in a general sense, if you just feel like, okay, we got to this point, now we got to make the next jump. The one thing I tell people is don't start one plant one or launch one.
Right.
And the way I view that differently is when you start a second service, in your case, a second service, let's say you're going to do like, I don't know, 9 and 11 or something. And you're going to say, starting in 2 weeks, we have 9 and 11. That's starting a service. That doesn't tell you who's going to be there. That doesn't tell you about the energy that's going to be there. That doesn't tell you about the focus, anything. Now, if you go to plant one, that's totally different. The way that I would do that is I would, several weeks in advance, probably at least a month, if not 5-6 weeks in advance, I'd say, like I said, 4 or 5 weeks in advance, hey, we're going to launch second service. It's going to be on this date. These are going to be the times. Could you fill out this card or QR code or whatever? Get their information and say, okay, are you going to the 9, going to the 11? So here's what I want to know. I want to know the person sitting in the chair, how many adults are in their household that come to church, how many children are in their household that come to church, and what service they plan on coming to. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to collect those, and then I'm able to say, okay, I got this many and this many. Now it might look like this, and you're like, oh my goodness. That would be a disaster. That would be horrible. Yeah. So how do we get it somewhere right around here, somewhere, maybe not like this. So if there's some people that are saying yes over here, you might need to get a few more to start saying yes over here. So you have to approach some people and ask some people and try to get it, 40, 60, somewhere in there. That's one thing. Secondly is what I would do is I would take all of that information and I would create 2 separate databases. And by creating 2 separate databases, you're able to say, here's database 1, database 2, here's the 9 o'clock database and the 11 o'clock database. And so in 5 weeks we're launching, or in 4 weeks we're launching. Now you can send out emails, you can send out videos, and you can address them as if they're their own team. Hey, 9 o'clock team, we're so excited. We're 4 weeks away. Hey, 9 o'clock team, we're only 3 weeks away. Hey, 11 o'clock team, we're only... And if you're at one service right now, you can actually announce at the service, hey, for all those that are going to the 9 o'clock, next week we're having a barbecue right after church. Only those that are going to the 9 o'clock.
Wow. Yeah.
Then the following week, only those that are going to the 11 o'clock we're having a barbecue for before you launch. Because what you're doing is you're speaking to them like they're a launch team, just like planning a church. When you plan a church, you have a launch team. You got your own 2 launch teams that you're trying to build up.
Right. Yeah, that really makes sense. What about like, because when I'm thinking about planting, I'm thinking about like teams.
Mm-hmm.
We need another team of ushers. We need another team of parking lot. We need another team of. So I was thinking more of that along that lines when you told me about planting the service rather than. So how do you build those teams for that second service without loading down the pack mules of ministry?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question and a great issue, because what you don't want is to start it and not have the volunteers in place. You got to have volunteers and leaders in place. Yeah. So volunteers and leaders, you got to start working on that quite a bit in advance. You got to pull the head of the children's, the head of the first impressions, greeters, ushers, all that, worship, pull them all together and say, okay, this is what's happening. This is what we think we're going to do. Let's get down to it. And you got to get pretty specific with people, because for some people that have never done this before, they'll be like, we're ready. They don't know what ready looks like. What does ready look like? They don't know what the battle looks like because they've never been in the battle, if you will. What does it really look like? What do I got to be prepared? So you're going to have to take 4, 5, 6 major departments, or somebody's going to need to sit down and start saying, okay, how many do you have? How could we divide that list up? Okay, over the next month, we need 4 more here, 3 more there, 5 more there, and 3 more there. Let's start recruiting. And that's called a simultaneous track. So you are planting, you're planning the service, you're getting ready, you're doing all that stuff, everything we just talked about a minute ago. But simultaneously, you're getting your teams ready. And they need to get ready. It can't be put together, thrown together, pieced together. It's got to be right. And it's an opportunity to potentially get 20 or 30 new volunteers. But they're going to need to go on a recruiting mode to get those volunteers. But you do not want to plan it and then have your head of your greeter, head of your usher in the children's department going, we weren't given any warning and I didn't understand. And I thought I would just be able to have this leaders and this is a mess. And no one showed up for the second service volunteers and now we're in trouble. Like, you don't want that.
Yeah.
You want the yes, there's the work to it because they got to almost double their teams.
Yeah.
So there's the work to it, but there's also, the opportunity that they need to see is that they have an opportunity to put a lot of people in ministry. So simultaneously, you're recruiting and you're building your teams while you're doing the whole plant, 2 services, separate emails, all that stuff.
Yeah. So what is a model for those teams? I've heard of, attend one, serve one. What would it be a total separate, almost like a separate church? It's like 2 churches, one or one church, two services or whatever,
Yeah.
like what's
model,
the
so you're
ideal
talking
model
about for volunteers,
volunteering?
you mean, or
Yeah, for volunteers, how do you keep them
in a
in
perfect
church
world,
and
they
serving?
would.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you always say you serve one, sit one. That's what we always
Yeah.
say. You serve. The whole goal is to create a culture of serve one, sit one. So it does take a
Okay.
lit. I mean, they're going to be there a lot
Yeah.
longer than they normally are. But if you create that culture early, rather than later, that's one thing I would really encourage you to do, Louie, is you have to create that culture now. Our culture is we
Yeah.
serve one and we sit one. And if you create that culture now, it won't be such a big deal later. But if you try to adapt that culture later, it's a lot harder.
Yeah.
But the serve one, sit one is definitely what you want to be shooting for.
Yeah.
And you got to be thinking like worship doesn't exactly need to double their team, but they do need to be aware they're going to have to spend more time there at the church.
More time there.
So
Yeah.
what I would do is I would kind of tell that worship leader, hey, yeah, you can just have your team stay longer, but why don't you figure out how to recruit 3 to 5 more so we can rotate in some more? Again, more
Yeah.
people involved. We talked about that engagement over attendance. More people get involved, the better.
Yeah.
But greeters, ushers, children's, you got to almost double everything, unless you already got a
Yeah.
big roster.
Yeah.
But you got to almost double everything.
Yeah. Well, that's great. That's all that we're considering right now, just trying to figure those things out and map it all out.
Yep.
But that's a great help for sure. Um, I think another question that I had was midweek service. What do we do with midweek? What are people doing with midweek service? It's a different time, right? I don't want to look
Yeah,
at
it
the
is.
but it is the it. You know what I mean?
The it.
So, do you have any advice on?
He
on
remembers.
midweek
Yeah. So midweek, the thing that I would say about midweek is, it does seem to be fading quite a bit. I think small groups have over the years have begun to take over the midweek.
Yeah.
However, I have been noticing a lot of churches have been doing this lately, where they will do. They'll be doing some small groups, but maybe a couple times throughout the year they'll do a midweek, but they'll only do it for 4 to 6 weeks, and then they're done.
Yeah.
If you do it every week, everybody'll first one that happens will be great. Second one less, and then it goes, just kind of goes down.
Yeah.
It's just a different era, different time. But if you say it's 4 to 6 weeks and it's on we're going to do 4 to 6 weeks on this book in the Bible, or 4 to 6 weeks on what God has to say about this, 4 to 6 weeks on this, and you only do it once or maybe once or twice a year. That has a discipleship component, but it has a beginning and end. And by having a beginning and end, you run a greater chance of people attending regularly because they know there's only 4 of them or 6 of them. And I like those. I've seen some really good success with those. Where people, again, they shorten it down. And so, all right, man, we're going to meet every Wednesday for the month of August, and we're talking about this, but only for 4 weeks or 5 weeks or whatever. I've seen that work out really, really well. And then you don't do it again for a few months.
Yeah. I think what we're doing now is we're doing first Wednesdays, we'll do just a worship night and then just a teaching the rest of the time. But I think that's something to consider. But it's been a struggle for a while. This isn't brand new. This has been a trend that's been going on for several years. Yeah. And you don't want to let go of something. It's kind of like I hate to use the saying, but the dead horse, you know what I mean? And
Exactly.
but
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah. No, that's
yeah.
good. That's good. Yeah, you're
Well,
right. You don't
thanks. I
want to, yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah, no, yeah, no, it's good, and I think it's good that you're thinking differently. One thing I've always taught is be stubborn with the vision, flexible with the plans.
Yeah,
So, stubborn with the vision is we want to grow people. Flexible with
yeah,
plans is doing Wednesdays don't work anymore the way they used
yeah,
to. Okay, well, if they
right.
don't, then what if we did it this way? And what if we did this? And what if we did this? Our vision, stubborn with the vision, our vision doesn't change. We want to disciple people.
Right.
How we get there, that may change, but the end result doesn't change. As long as you are keeping your mind on the end result, some people get like, well, you can't be letting go of Wednesday. Like as if somewhere in the Bible it says we have to have
Yeah.
a Bible study on Wednesday nights.
Yeah.
You
I'm
know?
pretty sure some people found that verse. You know?
Yeah. If not, they just wrote it in there.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, again, the end result, Louie, is what we're looking for. What are we trying to do? Create disciples. How we get there, let's just figure out the best pathway to get there. But how you get there doesn't really matter. Let's just figure out how to get there because the end in mind is what we're looking for.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah. What else, man? Anything else on your mind today? Anything else you want to talk about?
I guess kind of along the lines of like volunteering and stuff. So what do you do with a
Yep.
new person who's not quite stepped into their holiness yet? You know what I mean? And they're still struggling with different things. I think
Stepped
obviously
into their
you don't want
holiness.
somebody
That's good.
you don't want somebody standing at the door that smells like weed or whatever, right? So like, but how do you navigate that? Where do you position them? Where do you make room for them? I guess thinking about the shallow end of the pool and the deep end of the pool
Yep.
kind of thing. But
Yep.
what's your best advice on that?
Well, and you're talking about you're talking about the volunteering area, correct?
Yeah, yeah, just connecting people. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Everybody has I think a lot of people have different philosophies about that. I'm very open to people volunteering that, as you say, stepped into their holiness. That was the most political correct way I've ever heard anybody say that. Stepped into their holiness. But I would say that for me personally, I don't have any problem with them serving somewhere. Now, I don't want them leading.
right.
I
Yeah.
probably don't want them on stage.
Yeah.
But helping out parking cars or hospitality or helping out some treat. And clearly I don't want them coming to church drunk or coming to church high or anything. I mean, clearly I don't want that.
Yeah.
But if I know like that guy's a little, he's rough on the edges. Not, there's nothing issue going on, no issue that's going to harm the church. He's just still a little rough, He kind of drops a couple words here and there when he shouldn't, It's a little bit rough. I personally, I can't speak to everybody, but personally, I want to get those people involved because I want to get them around those that are going to, through their presence and through their conversation, are going to help disciple the individual. I want to get them around. Now, I don't want to put them on stage. I don't want to put them as a leader. But personally, I don't have a problem with it. I don't. If they're rough around the edges, man, let them serve. And and I've kind of had that philosophy for all my ministry. And maybe one or two times in the last 20 years, it didn't turn out good. Got me in a little bit of trouble. But for the thousands that it worked out well for, it was worth the one or two headaches.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because I kind of feel like a serve team is also a life group. You're doing life with these volunteers, and
That's right.
it's a way of connecting
right.
them to people, and not just a it's people before project. It's connecting them with people
Right.
that are gonna do life with them and stuff in that way. And I think
Yep.
also just getting them to connect is a type of ownership. When they own something, they're
Right.
part of something, it lasts a little longer. So
That's
trying to
right.
mend the net in every way we can, I guess.
Yeah,
So
that's it's
yeah,
a great way of looking at it. Absolutely.
yeah,
It's a great way of
yeah,
looking at it. Yep. Really, really good.
yeah. So you
Awesome.
suggest just like parking lot stuff like that. That's kind of lower
Yeah.
level. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I do. And
yeah,
you're right. You're putting them, if done right, you're putting them into a tribe. So, hey, I'm joining the parking lot. Well, you're actually joining, like you said, a life group, a small group, a tribe. If done right, if they have some good people there, if there's a leader there that's kind of building really building a team, they get together for a barbecue once every few months, whatever. Like they feel like they're a team. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Because that's really what you're looking for. And that's an important part. And look at those areas that aren't so kind of, up front or anything. And let that tribe, I think, is part of that discipleship. You become like who you hang out with.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of it. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. Anything else today?
I think the only thing I can think of that I just been kind of tossing around is host transition, service time, host transition. I don't know, kind of keeping an eye on the time and that sort of stuff, and everybody, keeping everybody happy and staying within that time frame. And I think especially going into, if we're going to plan a second service, you got to really be mindful of time. So how do you navigate service transition from worship to announcements to the sermon and stuff like that? What would be your advice on that one?
Well, the only thing I would really say about that, I don't know if I have any great advice except for just to say, I think you should guard the mic to a degree. And what I mean by that is, hey, it's Sunday morning. It's your Super Bowl. It's your main event. This isn't Wednesday night for whenever you do those things. This is Sunday morning. Get the best host you can. The people that have the energy, the people that have the skill in front of people, those that are mindful of the time, those that can communicate clearly. I've been in a lot of churches across America, and I'm sitting there just going, why do you have this person hosting? They don't know what in the world they're talking about. They're all over the map. They're taking too long. They're fumbling, and I'm like, oh no, like I always say, man, first time guests don't come with mercy; they come with judgment. So let's put on the best service we can, and hosting matters. Some people's like, just have the guy do an announcement. I'm like, no, it matters because you got your message, you got your worship, and you got the host. There's three elements. You might have a video here and this, that, and the other thing, but at the end of the day, you pretty much have three elements that someone's behind the mic on: worship, message, worship, and the host. You don't want one of the three. That's 33%. It's like 66% was good this morning, but 33% was, you don't want that. So guard the mic. Make sure it's the right person.
That's good.
It's got that personality. And remember, it's representing 33% of the three big mics for the morning.
So that's great.
Good.
I just trying to navigate that as well. We have some great people. It's just trying to keep them from preaching the announcements, what I mean, and stuff.
That's right. Well, man, hey, always good. I'm looking, our time's coming to an end here, but man, always good connecting with you, Louie. And I just, I love your heart. I love what God's doing in your church. Love being a part of it in any way that I can. And man, just keep up the great work. And thanks for being on today. Really appreciate it.
All right, Chris. Thank you. I appreciate it.